Welcome to Between Authors. I'm your host, author Adrian Lopez. If you enjoyed this episode today, please leave a like and leave a comment for us below. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification so you don't miss all the amazing authors coming up. What is it that excites us as a reader? It's finding that author or book that you may never have heard of or found, and sort of like the treasure hunt for a reader. The goal for my podcast here is to bring to you authors or books that you may never have heard of, but may be the treasure you've been searching for all along. Today in episode 7, I have author Elena Carter. We're going to find out a little more about her, what she's published, what she's working on, and maybe what her plans are for the future. Welcome to the show, Elena.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me. It's a great honor and it's a great pleasure to be here.
Thank you. I'm very happy that you're here with me today. Why don't you give the viewers a little bit of an introduction on you, what you do, what you like?
Okay, so my writing journey started about 3 years ago, although I have always wanted to be a writer. To be honest, since I was maybe 4 or 5, when I learned to read, and then I would read just anything, absolutely anything I could get my hands on. So I've always wanted to write, but life kind of works in intricate ways, doesn't it? It took me in a lot of different directions, and I guess maybe I never had the courage to actually, sit down and start doing it. Um, but at the age of 40 already, as I had my second son, he was a half-year old. I was encouraged by my husband, who is also a writer. He's a screenwriter.
Mm-hmm.
And because I mentioned it several times, and he kept saying, you should give it a try. You should give it a try. I have a feeling, he said, I have no idea why he had that feeling. He said, I have a feeling that this is something that you should be doing, if you were thinking about it your whole life. So, basically it all started then. It coincided with COVID. So I
Yeah.
started writing in the beginning of March 2020, so a bit over 3 years ago when we went into our first lockdown. And since then, I've released a fantasy trilogy. So I've published 3 books, a couple of short stories, and I have just been enjoying this journey so much because I realized that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. It feels right.
Yeah. Yeah, I've noticed that's been kind of the theme for a lot of the writers where it was COVID really gave them not only the time, but as they sat there and thought about it, they said, yeah, let me do this. Because you hear a lot of people that said, I've always wanted to write a book, but I just never did it. I just never got myself to do it or had the courage to do it. And it seems to be a theme among a lot of authors as well, and doing it later in life. I mean, I'm just starting mine and I'm 52. So same thing. I mean, it's been a long time and I've done the same thing. I've written since I was a kid, but always just from myself. I just always wrote it and kept it, to myself. So that's very interesting. Why don't you tell the viewers a little bit about your influences? It could be anything. It could be other authors. It could be, art. It could be music, anything that influences you, not only for your writing, but just maybe in life in general.
That's an interesting question. I always find it hard to point out like a favorite book or a favorite author. Yeah, because again, well, I started reading when I was 4. I'm 44, so I can do the math. I've read a lot. I've read a lot in different languages also because my English is my second language, right?
Yeah.
My native language is Russian. So actually, the fantasy books that I started reading at, well, maybe when I was like around 18, 19, they'd be in Russian. At that point, I was reading in Russian. I think probably the first one I really, really fell in love with was The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. That's just love. That's legendary. That's my love forever. And I don't know, I've always enjoyed escaping into stories that basically provide you like with a ticket to another dimension, to another world, because we always had this feeling that, look, there is more to this life than what we see around us.
Yeah.
There are amazing things, and my imagination would always kind of run wild when I was reading those books, and I was like, I wish I could create something like that. I wish I could write something that would also influence others, provide a chance to escape, provide I don't know, maybe some questions to ponder, or maybe some answers, that people are looking for. And I don't only read fantasy; I read across genres. I guess I'm not a real fan of the horror, to be honest. But otherwise, I read everything. I read a lot. So I guess it was that. And since my trilogy is focused on dreams, yeah, dreams being more than just dreams, yeah, dreams being like a portal into different worlds and different realities. Um, I think that was a great influence because um, my dreams have always been a bit wild. I always used to say that, oh, you definitely can make books or movies out of that stuff, and and that's what one of my characters says in the first books. It's like, my dreams have always been movie material, and that was me. That was basically me, and I know that it always influenced me. It always affected the way my day went, even if I can't remember what the dream was, but I know that something absolutely amazing happened there, something fascinating, something important, but I can't quite grasp it, that feeling when you wake up and you're like, I've been somewhere just
Yeah.
now. I can't remember, but I know that it matters. And you kind of go through your day like a little bit lost, like a part of you is not there because you're trying to remember that important thing. Um, yeah, so I guess that was that too. I have a lot of inspiration from my dreams, and they do appear in little bits and pieces that do appear in the books that I'm writing.
Nice. We'll get into the trilogy right now. Interesting question for you. Have you written anything in your native language, or do you plan on doing that?
Well, I get a lot of requests for my trilogy to be translated into Russian. To be honest, I really want to because, well, for example, my own mom has never read my books because she doesn't read English. Yeah,
Hmm.
and she helps me a lot. She's like rooting for me, and she's proud of me, but she has no idea what I'm writing. So of course, I would like to have my books translated into Russian, but to be honest, in the foreseeable future, I just don't have the time because I'm writing with a little super active toddler. He's turning 4 next month. I started when he was 6 months old. I was like, oh my God, it's so hard to write with a baby. It isn't. Trust me. When he's a baby and he sleeps like half of the day, it's much easier to write than when he's like, running wild around the house and you have to keep him safe. So yeah, I plan on doing that at some point. I really want to try, but my last 3 years at least, I have been heavily focusing on writing and reading in English. To be honest, I don't remember last time I read anything in Russian. I can read in Bulgarian too, for example. I live in Bulgaria, yeah, so I can read in 3 languages. But I'm focusing on English a lot because I think that, well, that's what every writer should do. You should write a lot and you should read a lot because this is how you hone your craft, and this is how you get into the right headspace.
Yeah.
So yeah, someday, I guess.
So let's talk about. We'll go over each book individually, but let's talk about the Dream Tamer Chronicles. Did you plan on this originally being a trilogy or multiple books, or is it something as the story just kind of went on?
The story went on.
Yeah.
In the beginning, when I had an idea, it just kind of came to me. I'm not really a plotter. Yeah, I don't really plot out my books, but I had a rough outline. So I knew who the main character was. I knew what was happening. kind of, sort of, where she was going. A lot of things, they just happened on their own. Some side characters appeared who actually demanded to have their own book later on. So it kind of, yeah, this is the way it went. I had this story to tell. And I think as I was nearing the end, I had a feeling that it's not over. It's not over, because there's this character, and I know now that I need to tell her story, because, at some point in the story, in the first book, she leaves her old diary to Tina, my main character. And as I was writing that, I just felt it. I was like, oh, I know what the second book is going to be about, because now I want to read that diary. I want to see what was in there. I want to read her story. So her story needs to be told. So yeah, originally it was supposed to be a standalone. It was supposed to be called Follow the Hummingbird. That was the title, was the idea from the beginning. I never really wavered. But I think, yeah, like somewhere in the second half or near the end of writing the first draft, I was like, yeah, I think book 2 is coming soon.
Yeah. So why don't you give, not too much, because we'll go into each individual book, but why don't you just give kind of what the overall maybe theme is that carries through the trilogy?
The main overall theme is dreams, as I said already. Yeah. So we have our main character, starting from book 1, is Tina. She is a young widow. She recently lost her husband. And while she is coping with grief, she starts having those very, very strange dreams. And she has a feeling that they're not just dreams, because like some of them are actually manifesting in her real life. So she finds out that she actually has an opportunity to travel through her dreams, to travel to different worlds and to different versions of reality. She meets friends. She has a mentor helping her on the way. She has very supportive friends in her real life, day-to-day life. But I would say that it is mostly about letting go. When you're going through something very extremely hard and painful, and when you have a feeling that there's no point, there's no point continuing, because like you're too heartbroken and you can't go on, and certain things, certain events, and certain people are actually showing you that no, you need to let go, and you need to give yourself a chance. You need to give your life a chance, and you need to move on with that. So yeah, coping with grief and letting go is that's actually something that runs through the whole trilogy, because all of the main characters who are present in all 3 books, they've all been going through that in one way or another.
Okay. So is it similar to like an astral travel kind of thing in terms of the dreams, and she's able to visit locations, or?
It pretty much is. She visits worlds that are like very, very strange and fascinating, and sometimes she can't understand whether it's dream or reality. But she does meet her late husband in the dreams, because he is now, since he left this world, he is a free soul roaming around, and she has a chance to see him. And that is the hardest part, because she feels like she also wants to let go of this world, because she just wants to stay there with him.
Yeah.
But he doesn't support that. He's trying to tell her that you've got your whole life ahead of you, and you need to live it, and you need to, don't waste this chance, basically. You need to let go. You need to move on. You need to be happy. You need to have your life. And yeah, so she'll have to take a difficult decision at some point.
Yeah. So you've talked a little bit about book 1, which you said is Follow the Hummingbird. Let me ask you a couple questions in regards to book 1. Did you have a favorite scene in the book? And that can be, the actual scene itself, or as you were writing it, or as you were coming up with it.
Let me think. Well, I really, really, really enjoyed writing all the dream sequences because, as I said, sometimes I would put some, a little bit of hints of my own dreams. And
Yeah.
sometimes that would be dreams that I had like 20 years ago. This is really weird. And like sometimes I don't remember what happened to me like last week. Yeah. And I honestly don't remember the names of my classmates or like college mates or something. But all of a sudden I can have a flashback of a dream that I had when I was a kid, you know, which is, I find it absolutely fascinating. And sometimes I felt like they have to be there, like a certain landscape or,
Yeah.
a certain feeling, a certain emotion, they have to be there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I absolutely loved writing those dream sequences. But I guess my favorite scene probably was when she met her future, I can say mentor and best friend, Alice, who is the main character of the second book. Now, Alice was not planned. Alice showed up. And I'm telling you, Alice just showed up there. She said, I'm going to be in this book and in the next book. And I was fascinated, I was writing it and I was like, okay, this woman she's an older lady, and they accidentally meet in a coffee shop, and I'm like, as I'm writing, I'm like, oh, okay, that's very interesting. That's a very interesting person. And whenever she would come up with some like life advice or some wisdom, it's like she was talking for me. What I type it, I'm like, oh my god, Alice is we all. One of my readers said, we all need an Alice in our lives, and I was like, yes, yes, that's exactly how I felt when I was writing it. So yeah, that's probably one of my favorite scenes.
Yeah, it's crazy. A lot of people don't understand that sometimes these stories do just take a life of their own, and you just gotta follow it. You just gotta follow where it goes, rather than just following the outline that you originally had. So, was there a scene, whether it was writing it or again the scene in there, maybe from a memory or something, that was the hardest scene in the book to do?
There were a couple of I'd call them nightmares that were sometimes you can write something and like actually scare yourself while you're writing that. But again, yeah, because I've always had like since I was a kid, I had a lot of different nightmares, and they kind of also manifested into the book. And I was like, as I was writing that, I was feeling that, but then I was proud of the way she was handling it.
Yeah.
So I guess I kind of lived through her. It was like, okay, you're doing better than I did back then. I the hardest scenes always to write for me were the scenes where she meets her husband, and it's like it's heartwarming and heartbreaking at the same time,
Yeah.
because he's there, he's there, right there, and but he's not. She can really be with him, or she wants to, but he doesn't really approve of that. He doesn't encourage her to do that, and she's very lost and she's confused, and uh yeah, basically grief, as I said, is one of the main uh themes in my books. And since I sadly know too much how it feels, it has shown a lot. And those scenes, they're hard to write, but they're also kind of, I don't know, cleansing your soul while you write them. I cry sometimes when I write them, and then you kind of feel better.
Yeah.
And then again, you don't. That is coping with grief. That is exactly the way it looks like in real life,
Hmm.
and it's exactly the way you process it in your writing. That's all I can say.
Yeah. And you have to process it. That's the thing. You can't put it away. You can't lock it away because it'll come up when you don't want it to. So you might as well kind of
Absolutely.
just get through it. And yeah, I mean, I noticed it's the same thing for me for my children's book for my daughter. Difficult, right? It's very difficult to do, but there is a healing from it as you go through it, even though it is difficult at the time when you're doing it. It does, it's hard to explain, but it does help you going through that process. So let's talk about I guess Alice, as you said, is the main character for book 2, which is Follow the Blue Rabbit. Why don't you go ahead and give us a little bit about what book 2 is about? Again, sharing as much or as little as you'd like.
So book 2 has two main characters. We still follow Tina because she's always the main character through the whole trilogy. But the other main character is Alice, because what happens in book 2 is Tina is reading the diaries, the old journal that Alice left her. So we get to follow, in one chapter we follow Tina's today and what's happening today in her life. And then the next chapter would be her reading the diaries of Alice. So we kind of have a chance to take a peek into the past, and what happened in Alice's life, because she has like a very, very crazy life also. And she's been through a lot, and she's now an experienced dream traveler, and she travels through different worlds easily. But we now can learn what brought her there, and where she started and what she went through. Also a pretty heartbreaking story at times, and I've heard from some of my readers that it's good to have some tissues and stand by. But I also really enjoyed writing in that format because I like reading books in diary format. It's kind of like you open someone's journal and you get to see not some narrator telling you the story, but you actually get to hear it and to feel it from first person perspective. So they're all three written in different styles. Basically, the first book it's all third person and it's past tense. Yeah. Then we go to book 2. We have some chapters in third person because the narrator is talking about Tina and what's happening. But then, of course, the diary chapters, they're first person. So it's kind of like, I don't know, kind of, a good distraction,
Yeah.
It kind of keeps your interest in all the time. And then the third book is just completely first person.
Okay. Did you find it difficult going back and forth in those point of views as you were writing book 2, or did it just come naturally within the story?
I think it came pretty naturally, because I don't think I even had those, those moments that sometimes writers say that you write scenes like out of order, like you have to write a scene a little bit, ahead in the future, and then you come back to that. No, it kind of just flowed, It's like I sit down to type, and I'm like, okay, today it's Tina. It's Tina's day. It's Tina's time. We scheduled an appointment. Today's Tina's story being told, yeah. And then the next time when I have a writing session, I switch.
Yeah.
I know that today it's Alice and she's telling her story, and that is 30 years ago also. So that's a long time ago in a different country. So that's very different. And I kind of dive into that, And then only when I finish that chapter, then I switch again and I go into the next chapter. So it pretty much flowed. Yeah, I have very limited writing time. So I can't even remember the times, if I could tell you how many months. With the first book, I remember that it was 9 months because I always said, oh, that's my first book, baby. Because exactly 9 months, first draft, exactly 9 months. And then editing, of course, and everything else. But book 2 and book 3, I actually wrote them quicker, although, as I said, my time is very limited. I can only write when my kid is napping, for an hour a day, maybe, not every day even. Yeah, so I have to make the best of the limited time that I have. So I guess I don't have time for for writer's block. People ask me, I'm like, I don't have writer's block. I don't have enough time. When I get the opportunity, I just sit there and I'm like, okay, I switch on and I just write.
I mean, maybe it's the limited time that just helps with the focus. You have to focus on it, and it just clicks in, and you just go at it. Would you suggest for, say, a new author that's thinking of doing that multiple point of views to do it kind of the way you did, where you focus on a day is a point of view and another day is a different point of view. So you stay within that thought process, that theme.
I think I would in general, but there are always exceptions and it always depends on the story. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know that I have sometimes I would have like two chapters in a row from one POV. Yeah. Because they demanded to, because usually I like, for example, in book two, I have a chapter of Tina, a chapter of Alice's diary, then Tina, then Alice's diary. Yeah. And then in book three, it's also two main characters, so their chapters like take turns. But sometimes you just get that feeling and you have that flow. It's like, no, right now, next chapter will be from the same POV because I know it's coming. I know that this needs to be told. I don't know. I just kind of feel that intuitively. So I think it depends a lot on the story. Yeah, and I would say that if you get the ideas for scenes, definitely always write them down. Like just write down whatever comes, whatever comes, because it doesn't stay. We think it's gonna stay. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Tomorrow you're not gonna remember it. A week later, forget it. You're definitely not gonna remember it. If you have an idea like for a scene later on in the book, for some, I don't know, maybe a piece of dialogue or something, write it down. But while you have the flow and while you're focused on one angle, I would say just pour it all out while it's flowing. When you finish that, you'll feel that you're ready to go on to the next. Well, at least it works for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think again, letting it flow probably is the best way to do it and just let it go through there. I mean, as I was writing my werewolf book, I wrote three major scenes that are not next to each other in the book and basically built the story around those scenes, to weave it through. And one of the things I use is I found myself naming chapters, giving each chapter a name, and that was my bullet point to
Mhm.
remember what that section was. So I had all the chapter names, even though maybe I'd only written three chapters at the moment, kind of knowing what the story would be rather than I didn't really even do an outline other than just chapter names. And that would remind me, okay, this is what I want to accomplish in here to get me to the next scene. And that's
That's
kind of the way I
awesome.
work through it.
That's an awesome approach. I only started naming my chapters in from book two. Book one, I don't know if I was lazy or I don't know what it was. They just had the numbers. Yeah. With book two, I decided to name them, and first of all, it's so much fun.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it's a whole different creative process. I loved it, but I did it differently. I would write it. Sometimes I had the name immediately, but mostly I'd write the chapter, and then I would go through the chapter, and then I would think about how I would kind of sum it up. Like what name I would give it. But what you're saying is so interesting. I think that sounds like an amazing. It's like additional inspiration.
Hmm.
It's like
Yeah,
a very mini plot that you have.
it really worked well. I mean, it kept the theme in my mind that I wanted. And a lot of times, even after I wrote the chapter, then I would say, okay, I think this is a better title for it. But the title would at least tell me this is what you want to accomplish in this. And sometimes I would have chapter, say, 12 written and maybe chapter 4 written. So I had 5 through 11 to do it. And those names would at least tell me, okay, this is the progress that you want to go in your story. So you get to that chapter 12 and it helped. It definitely helped me guide my way through that thing.
That is so cool. It's just so amazing how this creative process flows differently with everyone.
Mhm.
And I think that, if I was to give any advice to beginner writers, I would say that this is the beauty of it. Everybody has their own approach. There
Yeah.
is no right or wrong. You do what works for you. You do what feels right. Because It doesn't matter what anyone says.
Mhm.
There's some people are like they're so strict on the rules. No, you have to do that, and you have to plot it out like this, and it has to have so many details. And I wrote 100-page outline. I'm like, oh my god, I had like 3 paragraphs of a very very rough outline, and it still worked out.
Yeah.
It's because we're all different,
Hmm.
and the ideas that come to us. I don't know if you ever read Liz Gilbert's Big Magic. She writes about ideas and creativity. It's an amazing book. I really recommend it. So this theory of ideas being alive, let's say, yeah, this is an idea. This is a living energy that came to you and said, I want to be written. Yeah, but they're different. They're also all different and unique. And one book wants to be written this way, in another book will want to be written another way. And you just listen to it and to yourself and to your heart and to your creativity and to your intuition. And then you write. And then I think it works. I think then the real magic of writing works. Then you will really have your soul
Yep.
out there on those pages, instead of just strictly and blindly following the rules that you found somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I've mentioned it before on this podcast. It's really you have to find your voice. What is your voice, right? Don't try to copy somebody else. And I'm not saying, word for word, but the style, the way they tell a story, find your voice, right? If you're genuine to yourself, the readers will feel that, right? And
Yeah,
everybody needs to understand you don't have to fit yourself into something because there's a market out there for you. You just have to find them and have them find you. But everybody's voice will have a market, right? So you don't have to fit yourself into anything cookie cutter and say, I have to write it
absolutely.
this way, I have to do it that way. That's always the biggest thing I would say for anybody starting this is just find your voice, right? I mean, I used kind of my thought process is I use my all the years I've done designing furniture and business um, to do this. So I approached it in my same mindset that I would figure out how would I design this, how would I start, and it was never from start to finish. Sometimes it was the finish and to the middle and figure it out, and I use the same approach because that's how my mind works in it, and
Yeah,
that's how I do it, right? So you find your voice, what works for you, and again,
absolutely.
that will come to your readers. That genuineness will come through to your readers, and they'll enjoy it that much more, rather than you saying, "Okay, here's my formula. Let me just plug it in." That'll come off very. I don't want to say dull, but it will come off very formulaic, right? It's
Yeah.
not going to come off genuine. Um, so for book two, Follow the Blue Rabbit, same questions. Did you have a favorite scene and did you have a hard scene?
One of the hardest scenes was there were some absolutely heartbreaking parts in Alice's diary that, yeah, I heard a lot from my readers also that they were very hard to read, especially for someone who went through something like that. And I don't know, maybe I should have even like put it as a content warning, because there's mention of miscarriage. She's went through several actually issues of that. So, and again, because I have certain personal experiences that I could resonate with her. That was I cried. Yeah, I
Yeah.
wrote it and I cried. But then I also knew that I'm writing from the heart, because I know when I'm writing those feelings down, I know how they feel. You know. Um, hmm, favorite scenes. I don't even know. I think maybe again in Alice's diary there were some amazing scenes when she started traveling between the worlds, and she was getting some hints about her future life, and then how she met her future husband accidentally, but it was like already inspired by a dream, and that was a really nice and sweet scene to write. I like that. But yeah, it's so hard. It's like I have three books, and when people ask me, "Do you have a favorite?" and I'm like, well, I kind of love the third one. Don't tell the others. But if I'm objective, it's very hard to say. Yeah,
Yeah.
if there's like a favorite or not. It's like you can say it. Like, this one is my favorite.
Yeah.
I can't. I won't. Don't ask me. So same here, I guess. Because again, there are some scenes that were very sad. There are some scenes that were very vivid and very beautiful, because I write a lot of different worlds, and they're amazing, and they follow different rules. And you can have like several rainbows in the sky, and you have like all kinds of weird creatures running around. And it's these things, there is no limit to
Yeah.
what can happen in those worlds. And every time I write them, I absolutely love it, because I feel like I just visited that world. Because I don't know how they come to me. They just come to me. All those strange creatures, all those strange worlds out there. I just, as I type, it's almost as if someone is whispering,
Yeah.
those things into it. So you kind of feel like you have just visited the world. So it's fascinating. So I love all of those scenes. That's why I guess it's kind of hard to point out the favorite.
Yeah. I mean, they may have been all those dreams that you didn't remember, right? The ones that you knew you went somewhere but didn't remember, and that's part of this process. It's coming back up, and it's saying, "Okay, don't forget me, because we had a great dream here," and
Yeah.
you just bring it back up.
Yeah.
So, so book three is Follow the Dragonfly. Why don't you give us a little bit about what book three is in the trilogy?
So book three is written in first person,
Hmm.
present tense. So again, a completely different writing style. And I don't know what the rules are. Like, can you switch the writing styles within a trilogy? I don't know. This story wanted to be written like that. I just felt it. And it was also the quickest one to write.
Yeah.
That one was flowing. It was just going. It was just really going. Um, the second book, I'm sorry, dear readers, but the second book kind of ends on a cliffhanger. I know that not everyone likes that, but in the second book, one of the characters kind of gets stuck in the dream worlds. So our Tina, our main character, she has to go and find her and save her. So that's what the third book is all about. So basically, Tina is looking for her friend who's kind of lost in the dream worlds, and so we write about her adventures while she's looking for her, and asking some very powerful beings to help her, and she's doing her best. And her friend, uh, we read from her friend, about what's happening to her while she's stuck in those worlds, and there's all kinds of weird and wonderful things happening. There might even be a dragon. I won't I won't say more. But yeah, maybe it is actually one of my favorite books, because it just flowed. It flowed so quickly. I had another project that I started writing after Hummingbird, and then I put it on the shelf. And then I wrote the second book. I wanted to come back to that project, and then the third one, it just flew out. So I couldn't even focus on anything else while I was writing the Dragonfly. But I think that it was a very nice. Everybody got the closure, basically.
Yeah.
Everybody got their happy ending, and I think it was a really nice way to kind of like wrap everything up.
Yeah. I mean, and I wouldn't worry too much about your cliffhanger, because all three books are available, so they could go
Yeah.
buy all three and they don't have to worry about it. They could just read right through.
I think maybe that's why I was like really in a rush, because I heard from some readers that they were like, "What are you doing? What are you doing? What do you mean you just ended there where she's like she's almost in a coma, and like she's lost somewhere. What's happening? And I'm like, oh, okay, I better hurry up. So I wrote that one quickly.
And to answer your earlier question, Elena, it's your story, your world, so it's your rules. I mean, you follow whatever you want to do in that. And again, I would just say it's your voice, right? So you follow that. So there are no rules. It's whatever you come up with as you're doing this. I know again it's a difficult question, but was there any scenes that stuck out to you in book three that, like you said, it flowed really well, but was there something that was difficult maybe to work through, or did it everything just seem to the story just wanted to come out and you just kind of let it come out?
Yeah, it did. It just wanted to come out, and I don't think that I wasn't particularly stuck on anything. But there's another heartbreaking scene. I'm listening to myself, and I'm like, oh my god, all my books are heartbreaking. No, but seriously, because the whole main theme is of letting go and moving on. Yeah, and for all the characters, not just Tina, not just the main character. There is a very, very sad goodbye scene in one of the dream worlds where she finally lets go. At least she thinks so, and it's like it's that last step that she should have taken, and she was supposed to take, and everybody was telling her, but she's doing the right thing, but it hurts. And I know because I cried when I was writing that scene, and it's my favorite scene. It's very sad, but it's my favorite. And then also when I got the first feedback from the readers, and everybody was pointing out that particular scene and saying that this was the saddest but the most beautiful scene out there.
Yeah.
So I think I managed to convey that all those feelings and emotions that I had inside me. And but there was a lot of funny scenes also. It's funny at times because she meets the other main character. She meets someone in the dream world who is absolutely sure that he is hallucinating. He's in coma and he's hallucinating, and she's a hallucination. And she's trying to tell him that she's not. And he's like, well, how would you know? How do you know that you're not a hallucination? So yeah, there's a bit of a romantic line, some of the lighthearted dynamic going on there. It's a very pleasant read. It's a very pleasant read, especially for those who have already gone through the first two books. With all the other sobbing, heartbreaking scenes. Figure that everyone deserves something a little bit hopeful and
Yeah.
lighthearted, and warm.
But I mean, that's life in general. You're gonna have sad days. You're gonna have good days, funny days. So
Absolutely.
it's really the processing of all of those and moving through them. So I mean, I wouldn't worry about all the sad scenes you have in the book because again, it's how you come through that, right? It's the growth and you're evolving from those moments that probably helped you as you wrote them, but also the characters in the story, right? It's really that growth as you move through the storyline. Um, so I know you mentioned that this, book three is kind of the closure for it. Is that it for that storyline? Was that trilogy it for the storyline? Do you ever think of maybe a character moving on or something side, or was that's it? That's how I saw it. That's how I wanted to end.
That's it. I pretty much 99%, I'll say that's it. Unless, of course, they show up in a dream and they're like, with a knife to my throat, like you write another book about us. But no, I don't plan on writing anything in that trilogy anymore. I already started working on a couple other projects, and they're a bit different. One is in a different genre, so I think that this is it, and everything was wrapped up. It was a nice closure. I know that there's always spin-offs, especially what are you talking about? dream worlds. Yeah, there's no limits, right? I mean, I can write anything based in like one of those worlds that
Hmm.
I mentioned out there. But no, I think that I really miss the characters, of course, because it's look at 3 books, 3 years of my life, and my heart and soul in those books. But I guess I also learned my lesson that you have to let go, move
Yeah.
on. Yeah.
Yep. So I know you mentioned you're doing some other stuff. Is there anything you want to talk about? And again, you can give as little as you want. I know you're mentioning a different genre that you're looking at.
Well, I'll definitely mention my collection of short stories because I'll tell you because this is a reminder to myself that I must finish it and finally publish it because I started writing that collection after I finished the first draft of Hummingbird. And then I had this idea in mind that I want to have like a collection of short stories. They're separate short stories. Yeah, they're not related to each other. The only thing that they have in common is that they're all happening like in the same town. It's called The Town. Yeah, so you'll have the references in every little story, and they're all like fantasy, paranormal, that kind of thing. But you'll have the reference that is happening in the town. So I guess the town is actually the main character, because this is the place where all those weird and wonderful things are happening. And I wrote several short stories there, and then I kind of put it to the side because I was so busy writing the trilogy. And then I released a couple of short stories. I was in one of fantasy anthologies a couple of years ago. So there was always another side project, and that one was just gathering dust somewhere on my hard drive. But then I finally felt like no, 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 this is what I want to do next. I think I checked last time. I think it was like 20,000 words or something. It's like maybe 8 stories in there.
Okay.
Maybe I'll double it. Yeah, because it's a collection. Again, there's no rules. It can be this size. It can be this size. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I was thinking that it probably would be like altogether the size of a average novel, let's say. Yeah. But it's just a lot of different short stories, and it can be a never-ending process because they keep the new ideas keep coming. Like I
Yeah.
finished one and it's like, oh, okay, I really like this one, and then all of a sudden I'm walking my dog and then I have this idea. I was like, oh my god, I need to write about that. Yeah, and I jot them down in my notes, and then I come back to them. But this is the project that I really want to focus on next because it's been like neglected and abandoned for like 2 3 years. So that will be my next project, and then I am working on a co-writing project, which I won't talk a lot about because, well, I'm writing it with another author, and we decided that we're not disclosing anything yet because we are both very busy and we're taking our time to write it.
Hmm.
The only thing that I will say is that it's an amazing experience. I really, really wanted to try co-writing a book with someone. So my friend, my writer friend, and we decided to give it a try. So again, I write a chapter, she writes a chapter, and we
Hmm.
write them from two different POVs of two different characters. Like I write my character, she writes her character, and basically we again have a rough idea of what's happening, but it's kind of like a game because it's like, okay, so I'm going to write it and I'm going to end it here, and now let's see how you get out of this because I'm not telling you what's happening, and you're gonna have to write the next chapter. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's a very slow process because again we're working on different timelines and both very busy, but so I can promise when that's coming, but that's amazing, and I have a feeling that it's going to be really cool. And I started writing a new sci-fi story that came to me in my dream, aren't you not even surprised? Yeah. So like, yeah, I woke up with a very rough idea, wrote it down, and I decided to give it a try. So far it feels good. I have never written sci-fi. I have no idea if I can pull it off. But the story is talking to me and it wants to be written, so I'm giving it a try, but again without like any, like hard deadlines or anything. I mean, my kid is turning 4 next month. He's refusing to nap. I don't even know when I'm going to write if he doesn't. So yeah, no deadlines here, but a lot of writing.
And then I know you also have your podcast, which is called Dreams, Books, and Miracles. Is that something you're continuing? Are you still working on that?
I am. I am. I haven't released a new episode, and I don't know. Feels like forever, maybe about a month. But I've really had a really crazy summer, and but yeah, I'm continuing. I think I have like 12 episodes out. The main idea was to I like inspiring people. I like. I hope that I can inspire someone and maybe provide some useful insights or like by sharing my story and by sharing my experience. Yeah, maybe I can help someone or maybe I can just encourage someone to give it a try. Yeah, because this is one thing that I keep always telling people that don't think that it's too late. I started writing when I was 40. Yeah, it's never too late. I don't even regret anything, to be honest. Yeah. It had to happen that way. I had to be that person with that background and those experiences to start writing. Yeah. So I think that everything happens for a reason. Yeah. Everything happens at the right time. So basically, yeah, I just wanted to kind of share, talk about books, talk about following your dreams and try to encourage people to follow their dreams, and not give up on them and not be afraid and like gather the courage to make the first step if need be.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely, I will definitely be working more on my podcast. But yeah, then again, I have 3 works in progress, and all the social media, and a YouTube channel and a podcast, and I have no idea how I'm doing all that.
Yeah, I know it's difficult.
Yeah, you
So
know about the field.
yeah. So future plans for Elena. What after you say you finish your short story collection and your sci-fi and the co-writing, what are some maybe goals or things you would like to do in the future if time permits or if the opportunity comes up?
Well, I also started um, trying to do some screenwriting. I wrote. Basically I turned one of my short stories into a short screenplay, and then I started writing another one. So that's basically that's project number 4. So that's way too much. So it's waiting for its turn out. But it's very interesting. It's a different world of writing altogether. So
Yeah.
I find it really fascinating. Um, I definitely will be doing some more of that. Actually, I was hoping that one day I could sit down and try to write a screenplay from Follow the Hummingbird,
Hmm.
which that could be a feature that could be 3 films, or that could even be broken down into like a mini series or something. But yeah,
Yeah.
they're very ambitious plans. But see, one thing that I know for sure is that you can't stop me now. I'm writing. I started writing 2 years ago. I am right. I will be writing
Yeah.
as much as I can. So whenever I have the time and whenever I have the opportunity, I will be continuing to write a lot, to read a lot, to learn and try new things, because this is absolutely amazing. The amount of things that you can learn these days, and yeah, of course you always learn by actually doing it. I don't just mean like read up on it, but actually trying and actually doing. So yeah, I hope that there will be many more books coming. Maybe another series, but so far I'm kind of focusing more on standalones.
Hmm.
But maybe other series. Maybe I also wanted to try writing in other genres like women's fiction, contemporary fiction. Yeah, so we'll see. There's a lot of plans. There's not enough time. Well,
Yeah. That's always the problem.
yeah.
I just want to remind the viewers that I will leave all the links for Elena's books and website, everything below, so you can find ways to find her and find what she's working on. And just want to remind again the viewers, if you enjoyed this episode, please like it. Please leave a comment for either Elena or myself. If you have any questions, let us know what you enjoyed about the episode. And again, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification so you don't miss all the amazing authors coming up. Want to thank you again, Elena, for coming on. This is a great conversation. I love talking about all your books and the process you went through, and I really appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you so much. It was a great pleasure, and I'm very honored to be on your channel. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again, viewers, for watching, and hope you enjoyed it. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.